They say the sharpest pain doesn't come from an enemy's blade. It comes from the hand you once held, the hand you trusted the most. When I look back now, I can almost pinpoint the exact moment my world cracked. But at the time, I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. Because who in their right mind would ever expect betrayal from the person they called their best friend? Yes, my best friend. The one I laughed with, cried with, built dreams with. The one I believed would stand by me no matter what storm came our way. I thought he was my brother in everything but blood. I thought nothing could ever shatter the bond we had. But I was wrong. And the cruelest part? Betrayal doesn't happen all at once. It creeps in quietly like a shadow slipping under your door at night. At first, you barely notice it. A strange look, a sharp word disguised as a joke, a broken promise you convince yourself was an accident. Until suddenly you wake up one day and realize the person you trusted most has been chiseling away at your heart for far longer than you knew. I didn't see the lies at first. I didn't recognize the mask he wore, because I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe in us. But what happens when believing is the very thing that destroys you? What happens when your closest friend becomes your greatest enemy? The truth hit me like a storm I wasn't ready for. Fierce, merciless, tearing apart everything I thought I knew. And once the mask fell, once I saw who he really was, there was no going back. That night, my life split into two halves. Before the betrayal, and after. The before was filled with laughter, secrets whispered in the dark, promises of forever. The after? It was filled with silence, with questions, with a rage I couldn't tame. I'll never forget the moment it all came crashing down. The moment I realized the betrayal wasn't just a mistake. It was a choice. A deliberate choice to hurt me, to tear me down, to take from me the one thing I thought no one could ever take. Trust. And in that moment, something inside me broke. But something else was born too. A fire. Because betrayal doesn't just wound. It awakens. And what it awakened in me was the will to make things right. This isn't just a story about pain. It's not just about how I was torn apart by the person I trusted most. No, this is a story about what came after, about how I turned that pain into strength, about how I made sure that betrayal didn't end me, but instead ended him. So if you think you know what friendship means, if you think you'd never be fooled, never be blindsided, never be broken by someone you love, let me tell you my story. Because once you hear what happened between me and my so-called best friend, you'll understand why trust is the most dangerous gift you can ever give. Every story of betrayal begins with a story of trust. And mine began the day I met him. I was the new kid, awkward, quiet, carrying more books than confidence. I remember standing in the schoolyard, unsure where to go, pretending to scroll through my phone just to avoid the stares. That's when he walked up to me. Daniel. With that easy grin, that effortless confidence, he said, "You look like you could use a friend. Lucky for you, I'm the best one you'll ever have." I thought he was joking. But little did I know, those words would define the next years of my life. From that moment on, we were inseparable. Lunch breaks turned into inside jokes. Long walks home became therapy sessions where we shared our fears and dreams. When I stumbled, he picked me up. When he got into trouble, I covered for him. We were more than friends, we were brothers. And it wasn't just me who felt that way. My family welcomed him like one of their own. My mom would cook extra food just because she knew Daniel was coming over. My dad would say, "That boy's got your back." I can tell. Even my little sister adored him, always asking when big brother Daniel would visit again. Together we dreamed big. We promised each other that one day we'd rise above the small town we came from. We'd make something of ourselves. Success, happiness, freedom, we'd chase it all side by side. I trusted him with everything. My secrets, my fears, even the things I was too ashamed to tell anyone else. And in return, he trusted me. Or at least I thought he did. We shared birthdays, victories, heartbreaks. I remember one night in particular. We were sitting on the rooftop of my house, staring at the stars. Daniel turned to me and said, "No matter what happens, promise me this. We'll never let anyone or anything come between us. Best friends for life, I promised." Without hesitation. Because back then, it seemed unthinkable that anything could ever break us. He was the brother I never had, the family I chose. He was the one person I believed would never hurt me. And maybe that's why it cut so deep later. Because when betrayal comes from someone you barely know, it stings. But when it comes from the person you would have taken a bullet for, it destroys you. Looking back, I can see how tightly I held on to that bond. How much I needed it. How much I built my world around it. That was the foundation. The unshakable bond. The friendship I thought would last forever. But what I didn't realize was that even the strongest-looking walls can have cracks hidden deep inside. Cracks that spread quietly until one day everything collapses. And soon, I was about to see just how fragile forever really was. At first, everything between us felt solid, unshakable. But I've learned that even the strongest bonds don't break. Suddenly, they crack little by little, until one day they shatter. The first cracks between me and Daniel were so small I almost ignored them. Maybe I didn't want to see them. It started in our last year of high school. Both of us were ambitious. Both of us chasing dreams bigger than our small town could hold. We applied for the same scholarship, a chance to get into one of the best universities in the country. The night before the results came out, we sat under the stars like we always did, and he said, "No matter what happens, we're in this together. If one of us makes it, it's like both of us made it." His voice was steady, his eyes convincing. I believed him. But when the results came, I got the scholarship. He didn't. At first, Daniel hugged me, congratulated me, told me I deserved it. But something in his smile didn't reach his eyes. It was small, almost invisible, but it was there. And from that day on, things began to change. He started with little comments, the kind you laugh off at first. "Must be nice having everything handed to you. Guess some of us just have to work harder." I laughed, pretended it was a joke, but the sting stayed. Then came the misunderstandings. If I spent time with other classmates, he'd sulk, saying, "I thought I was your only real friend." If I achieved something, even something small, he'd find a way to downplay it, like it didn't matter. It wasn't just words either. He began to compete with me in ways that felt less like fun rivalry and more like war. If I joined a club, he'd join too, just to outshine me. If I told him about a new idea, I'd find out later he'd presented it to others first, like it was his own. Slowly, I started to feel the balance shift. Our friendship no longer felt like two people supporting each other. It felt like a scale, one that always had to tip in his favor. I told myself it was just jealousy, that it would pass. After all, best friends fight, right? Best friends forgive. But deep down, I knew this was different. The way his eyes lingered too long when I succeeded. The silence that followed my victories. Heavy and uncomfortable. The sharpness in his tone, hidden behind smiles. These weren't random cracks. They were the beginnings of something bigger, something darker. I wanted to believe our friendship could withstand it. I wanted to believe that the boy who once promised me forever would never betray me. But the truth was simple. Forever had already started to crumble. And soon, the cracks would spread so wide nothing could hold us together anymore. The cracks in our friendship were painful, but I still clung to the hope that things would heal. I told myself Daniel was just struggling, that once he found his own path, the bitterness would fade. But I was wrong. What happened next proved that some people don't just slip into betrayal, they plan it. It started with whispers. Classmates I barely knew began looking at me differently. A few avoided me in the halls. Others snickered behind my back. I didn't understand why, until one of them finally let it slip. Daniel had been talking. At first, I couldn't believe it. He was telling people I didn't earn my scholarship, that I cheated, that I used connections I didn't even have. He twisted late-night study sessions into lies, painted me as someone dishonest, someone who didn't deserve the future I'd worked so hard for. I confronted him, desperate for an explanation, but he just smiled and said, "People believe what they want to believe. Maybe you're not as perfect as you think you are." That was the first time I saw him without the mask. The warmth, the loyalty, the brotherhood I thought we shared, gone. All that remained was envy, sharp and cold. And it didn't stop there. One afternoon, I walked into class only to find a copy of my scholarship essay passed around, highlighted and scribbled with mocking comments. Someone had leaked it. My words, my hard work, turned into ammunition for ridicule. Guess who had access to that essay? Only one person. Daniel. I remember standing there, watching people laugh, feeling my chest tighten as though the walls were closing in. My heart wasn't just breaking, and it was collapsing. The betrayal wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a slip of anger. It was deliberate. He wanted to ruin me. He wanted to take from me the one thing I thought I had earned. And worst of all, he succeeded, at least for a while. Teachers began to doubt me. Friends grew distant. Even my family started asking questions. I never thought I'd have to answer. Did you really earn this? Did you do something wrong? That was the breaking point. Because betrayal isn't just about lies or schemes. It's about watching someone you love twist the knife while you stand there, helpless, still wondering why. I went home that night, locked the door, and sat in the dark for hours. I replayed every memory, every laugh, every promise. How could the person who once swore to be my brother choose to destroy me instead? The truth hit me hard. He had never been happy for me. My success was his nightmare. And instead of being a friend, he chose to be my enemy. That was the night I stopped believing in forever. That was the night I lost my best friend. And that was the night something inside me began to change. Because if Daniel thought he could break me and walk away, he was wrong. For days after the betrayal, I walked around in a fog. Every corner of my world seemed darker, every sound sharper. I could still hear the laughter when my essay was passed around. I could still see Daniel smirk when I confronted him. His words echoed in my head, mocking me. Maybe you're not as perfect as you think you are. It would have been easy to give up, to let his lies define me, to let his envy erase everything I had worked for. But something inside me refused to stay broken. Pain has a strange way of waking you up. And that pain, it lit a fire I didn't know I had. I decided then, if Daniel wanted to see me fall, I would do the opposite. I would rise higher than he could ever reach, but not just by succeeding, by exposing him for what he truly was. My plan wasn't built overnight. No, it started small, like a spark slowly growing into a flame. I knew if I wanted to win, I couldn't act out of pure anger. I had to be careful, patient. The first step was silence. I stopped defending myself against his lies. I let him think he had won, that I was too weak to fight back. And as expected, his confidence grew. He talked more, spread more stories, convinced more people. He thought the stage belonged to him now. Good. Let him take the spotlight. Because the higher he climbed on his lies, the harder he would fall. The second step was gathering proof. I kept records, messages, notes, anything that hinted at his jealousy. I spoke to classmates he had slipped up in front of, the ones he bragged to about teaching me a lesson. Quietly, I pieced together the puzzle. Every lie he told, every scheme he pulled. And then came the third step, timing. I waited for the perfect moment when everyone's eyes were on him. And that moment came sooner than I expected. A school assembly where students were recognized for achievements. Daniel was desperate to shine, to stand above me once and for all. That's when I knew. That was when I would reveal the truth. But here's the thing about revenge. It's not just about what you do. It's about how you make them feel. I didn't just want to prove Daniel wrong. I wanted him to feel the weight of his own betrayal. I wanted him to look around and realize the trust he craved. The respect he stole had all turned against him. And so I prepared, patiently, quietly, carefully. Because if Daniel thought he had destroyed me, he was about to learn the most important lesson of all. The fire he tried to put out had only just begun to burn. The day of the assembly arrived like the calm before a storm. The entire school gathered in the auditorium, the air thick with chatter and anticipation. Students were being recognized for their achievements, one by one called up to the stage. And sitting just a few rows away from me was Daniel. He looked smug, confident, as if the world already belonged to him. I knew that look. He thought I was beaten. He thought I'd accepted the humiliation he had carved into my name. But what he didn't know was that the silence I'd given him was the silence of preparation. When my name was called, I walked onto the stage. The applause was hesitant, not as warm as it used to be. His rumors had done their damage. I could feel the eyes of my classmates questioning, doubting. For a moment, my chest tightened, but then I saw him, Daniel, smirking. And that smirk gave me strength. I stepped up to the microphone. My voice trembled at first, but then it steadied. I spoke about the scholarship, about the late nights of studying, the sacrifices, the dreams, and then carefully I shifted. But I've learned something recently, I said, scanning the crowd. Sometimes the people closest to you don't want to see you succeed. Sometimes they'd rather destroy your hard work than celebrate it, murmurs rippled through the audience. Daniel's smirk faltered just slightly. I reached into my folder and pulled out copies, the evidence I had gathered. Screenshots of messages where Daniel had bragged about teaching me a lesson, notes he'd passed around mocking my essay, even statements from classmates who had overheard him spreading lies. One by one, I laid them out, my voice calm, deliberate. The truth, I said, always comes out. And when it does, masks fall. Today, I'm not here just to be recognized for what I've achieved. I'm here to show that no matter how many lies are told about you, the truth has power. More power than jealousy, more power than betrayal. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Daniel. His face, once smug and proud, was pale. He stammered, tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. People were whispering, glaring at him, realizing what he had done. For the first time, he wasn't in control. For the first time, his lies didn't protect him. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to humiliate him further. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. And in that moment, the balance shifted. The trust he had stolen was gone. The respect he had craved vanished. The spotlight he had fought for now burned him instead of me. As I stepped down from the stage, our eyes met. No words were exchanged. None were needed. He knew he had lost. And I had finally won. After that day in the auditorium, nothing was ever the same again. For me, it was like stepping out of a storm. The weight that had been crushing my chest for weeks finally lifted. People who once whispered behind my back now came up to me with apologies, admitting they had believed Daniel's lies. Teachers who had doubted me looked at me with renewed respect. My family, who had quietly carried their own worries, embraced me with pride. It wasn't just about clearing my name. It was about reclaiming my voice, my dignity, and my future. But for Daniel, things unraveled quickly. His charm, the confidence he wore like armor, began to crack. Friends distanced themselves, no longer fooled by his act. The same classmates who once laughed at his jokes now avoided his gaze. He became the subject of whispers, the target of the same judgment he had once aimed at me, and I could see it in his eyes. The realization that he had lost everything. Not because I destroyed him, but because he had destroyed himself. The school administration eventually caught wind of the evidence, too. While he wasn't expelled, he was reprimanded. His reputation officially tarnished. The scholarship he had once mocked me for? He could never apply for it again. Doors that had once seemed open to him now closed, one by one. As for me, I moved forward. University welcomed me with open arms, and I threw myself into my studies, determined to prove, not to others, but to myself, that I was worthy. I worked harder, pushed farther, because I had something Daniel never understood: resilience. And yet, despite everything, I didn't feel joy watching him fall. There was no satisfaction in seeing his loneliness, his silence in the halls where he once thrived. If anything, it was sad, tragic, because underneath all the lies and betrayal, I remembered the boy who once shared his secrets under the stars, the boy who promised me forever, and it hurt to admit that he had been swallowed by his own envy. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't just break the victim. It consumes the betrayer too. In the end, I didn't need to destroy Daniel. He did that himself. All I needed to do was stand in the truth. And as I looked at the road ahead, I realized something important. The betrayal had broken me once, but it had also rebuilt me. Stronger, wiser, untouchable in ways I had never been before. Yes, I lost a best friend. Yes, I lost the idea of forever. But I gained something far greater. The strength to rise even when the person I trusted most tried to tear me down. That was the true aftermath. Not his fall, but my rise. They say betrayal changes you, and it's true, but not in the way you might think. Yes, it leaves scars. Yes, it makes you question everything, your choices, your trust, your own judgment. But betrayal also has a strange gift hidden inside it. It forces you to grow. It forces you to see people for who they really are. And it teaches you that strength doesn't come from never being broken. It comes from learning how to rise after you've been shattered. When I look back now, I don't just see the lies Daniel told. I see the lessons I carried out of that darkness. I learned that not everyone who smiles at you is your friend. Some people wear loyalty like a mask, but underneath, they're waiting for a chance to use your trust against you. It's painful to accept, but it's real. and pretending otherwise only leaves you blind. I learned that silence is powerful. I didn't win by screaming or by fighting him on his level. I won by being patient, by gathering the truth, by letting his own actions betray him. Sometimes the strongest move is not to react right away, but to wait until the truth can speak louder than you ever could. And most importantly, I learned this: betrayal doesn't define you. It defines the person who betrayed you. Their choices, their envy, their lies, that's their burden to carry, not yours. If you've ever been betrayed, you know the feeling, the disbelief, the hurt, the endless loop of questions. Why me? How could they? What did I do wrong? But the truth is, it's not about you. It never was. Betrayal comes from weakness, from fear, from someone else's inability to celebrate your light. So if you've been broken, if you've been stabbed in the back by someone you thought would stand beside you forever, hear this: you are not less because of what they did. You are more because you survived it. I survived it. And in a way, I'm grateful. Because without that pain, I might never have discovered just how strong I really was. Daniel's betrayal was the end of our friendship. But it wasn't the end of me. It was the beginning of a stronger, wiser version of myself. And maybe that's the real revenge. Not proving them wrong, not watching them fall, but standing tall, unshaken, living a life they can never touch. So to anyone listening right now, holding on to the hurt of someone's betrayal, don't let it destroy you. Let it build you. Let it light a fire inside you that no lie, no envy, no false friend can ever extinguish. Because in the end, betrayal is not the story of how they broke you. It's the story of how you rose. Subscribe to our channel for more videos. Thanks.